specialists at the co-op talking about their summer slam of PD. So my summer slam is not that heavy, but it is exciting to kick off something for our Spanish teachers at the high school level. There will be one next week, I believe, and I'm looking at the date really fast. There is one for elementary social studies next week, and then we have one for ESOL K-12 on the 16th. And we're excited about that one because we have 71 people signed up for that one on the 16th. So we are kicking off a lot of summer PD. Very exciting, and we are just glad to be here to support the process and your practices as you support student learning. And anything that you need, there are 6 offices of ERC around the state, and the directors would be glad to support anybody and everything that we can do to support school improvement and student achievement. We're pretty well versed in PLCs and HRS and everything in between as we go through. But we want to welcome you and thank you for joining us. I know you're seeing the live transcript up and I can't get the button to unclick, but you are welcome to click on live transcript and you can go up and hide the subtitle as you go through. And so that if you don't want to see that live transcript, you can hide that and it will be gone. Susan also just posted our community PD calendar with all of the summer PD that we have going on, and we're very excited about it. We're adding to that, and we will have a full series starting again in August. Not a whole lot in July going on, but we have a few things, but in August 1, we will kick off in full stream again. If you're looking for something on its classroom assessments, which I know that was always kind of my weakness in the classroom, I'm hosting Dr. Phil Warwick on how to write quality classroom assessments on the 20th, and we've got 144 people enrolled in that one. So if you are looking for another PD and want something great, Dr. Warwick is fun, and we'll be having all day. But I'm going to turn it over to our ladies, the dynamic triplets, I guess is what we'll call you today, moving forward. So ladies, go for it.
Okay, hola. I just wanted to thank you all again, as Susan said, for coming to our PLC processes PD this summer. We are going to be discussing best practices and strategies to support classroom instruction. So thank you for joining us. We did want to take a minute to introduce ourselves. So I'll start. My name is Carmen Christner, and Susan kind of recruited me to kind of get the ball going, and I recruited some other people. Some of you may have been reached out to by me to join our team, and if you haven't already, you'll definitely be recruited by me by the end of the day. But I have been teaching Spanish for 17 years. I teach all levels. So if it's a level, I've probably taught it or currently teach it. And then I'm going to go ahead and let my other fabulous ladies take a moment to introduce themselves.
Well, I guess I can go next. Hello, everyone. My name is Melinda Smith. I also work at Lakeside with Carmen. This is also my 17th year teaching and teach Spanish 1 and certified to teach AP. But the last few years, I've been mostly teaching Spanish 1 and 2, college Spanish 1 and 2. And Valerie, how about you?
Hello. Hi, guys. My name is Valerie Hope. This is my 4th year teaching Spanish at Siloam Springs High School. Before that, I taught for 4 years at Arkansas State. I met Carmen and Melinda virtually via Zoom on our AP workshop last summer. So we've enjoyed getting to work together this semester and a lot this week preparing this presentation for you guys. I'm just going to kind of keep an eye on the chat today, and we also have a parking lot for questions. I'm going to share the link for that. So if you have any questions, you can just park them there, and we'll make sure we address those before the session is over this afternoon.
Yes, so that is one big thing we wanted to say. We are going to go ahead and share our screen with you so we can share our presentation that we worked on. Melinda, do you mind sharing your screen with the presentation? I'm having some technical difficulties today, so I've recruited their help in being the manners of the parking lot and all things breakout group and presentations. So when you see this PowerPoint here, we just took a moment to talk about who we are. And at the bottom, you'll see where it says parking lot. That is the link that Valerie just shared out with you all. And this will just help the PD to go a little smoother since there are so many of us here. If you have a question, pop it in there. Valerie will answer it right away. If it's something that we need to address as full group, we totally can, and we'll go from there. So moving right along, we're here to spark curiosity, ignite passion, and unleash the genius that is the Spanish in today's students. So Melinda, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about that.
Well, sure. I've been reading this book. Let me give you the author here, by Dr. Katie Martin. And this is the title, Spark Curiosity, Ignite Passion, and Unleash Genius. And I think we've been very involved in this work of unpacking the state standards and integrating it with our curriculum at Lakeside. And I kind of just, this is sort of a, if anything, it's a note to self to remember that oftentimes when we get into this work of working with the standards, just to remember that, you know, we're also teaching students and that whoever shows up for your Spanish classes, that, you know, they're really the reason that we're here. And I know that I saw this poster online, and again, it spoke to me. I know that we've all had a rough few years, and this just spoke to me. You know, let nothing stand in the way of your why. And I know all of us here are passionate about the Spanish language and the culture and teaching our students. And I know that we're all here to level up our practice. And I found, you know, through our group, that, you know, this process of working as a team and working as a group to unpack the standards has really elevated our practice in amazing ways. And so we really hope to share that with you.
Yes. So if you're anything like me, you like to have somewhat of an idea of what to expect as the day goes along. So we wanted to start out with an agenda to let you know what to expect. Of course, we're going to start talking about what is a PLC. So for some of you, that'll be very familiar. You've been working with a PLC. It's been drilled in your head. And some of you may not know at all what a PLC is. So we'll take a little bit of time to talk about coordination versus collaboration within the PLC process. We'll then move on to talk about the essential actions, getting insanely clear about what students must learn. The 4 essential questions of a PLC, focusing on the learning and collaboration, grading for mastery, conclusion, next steps, and then we've got a little bit of information that we're going to offer you guys to help keep in touch with Spanish teachers in the state if that's something that you're interested in. We're also going to take a little break at 1:15 and 2:30 in case you need to do whatever you need to do. It'll be real short, potty break or whatever you need. So know that that's in there. So if you're trying to hang on for a break so you don't miss anything exciting, 1:15 and 2:30 would be the times. So moving right in, we're going to start with what is a PLC. So a PLC, Melinda, I'll let you talk on the next
Sure.
slide first.
So, you know, PLC, a professional learning community. I think that when we started this process with Solution Tree, Carmen and I were very good at coordinating what we were doing with our classes. But the process really got us to shift from coordinating our programs, our levels, and our lesson plans to really collaborating. And that was a big mindset shift for us. And I think, well, we also want to address the issue of singletons. I'm not sure how many singletons we have with us today. But Carmen, did you want to make our pitch for the singletons to join us?
I will make a pitch for the singletons because it is hard being a singleton, and even having Melinda there at Lakeside with me, we're the only 2 Spanish teachers, but we offer a lot more levels than 2 levels of Spanish. At Lakeside, we offer Spanish 1, College Spanish 1, Spanish 2, College Spanish 2, Spanish 3, Spanish 4, AP Spanish, Spanish for native speakers. And so, so even though we do have a team, we're also singletons. So as Spanish teachers, this is an opportunity to make connections so that you aren't living on a Spanish island by yourself. Attending this PD, finding a group of educators to collaborate with, and joining this PLC team is a way for you to no longer be a singleton. Although you might be the only Spanish teacher at your school or the only one teaching a specific level, you're definitely not alone in the state. And through this PD, you have the opportunity to participate in the collaborative process and find a team that you can work with. And like I said, we've got some, we'll give you a link and stuff later if you want to hook up with specific people, or if you want to hook up with all of us to make it better for everyone in the state. So
Well, here was my quote for this mindset shift from coordinating in teams to collaborating. And this is from the Essential Handbook for PLCs at Work by the late Richard DeFore. And he wrote, it's a group of people working interdependently to achieve a shared goal for which we are mutually accountable. And I think that sort of really goes to the heart of the difference between collaborating and coordinating.
Yes. So, which brings us to how we started. So the very first thing that we had to do when we started was set norms, set goals, and set essential standards. As a Spanish teacher, you know that we have a million standards. So we really had to take time to discuss and unpack which ones we thought would be the most important. We'll get to that in a second, though. I'm going to start with the norms. If Melinda, you'll click the norms for us. It's okay. Yeah. So when we're talking about setting the norms, we're talking about coming prepared, respecting the time, staying focused, and holding the questions. And this has been one of the main things that's helped us to be so successful in our meetings, to be sure that we were able to plan properly and execute everything we needed to execute. We celebrate our wins every day. That's how we start off, or every meeting. That's how we start off our PLC, so that we are trying to stay positive, because we know that in today's educational world, it is so easy to get bogged down, that we try to remember why we all started this in the first place, with celebrating the wins. We're sure that we bring all of our necessary data and materials so that we can share, because that's really what the PLC process is all about, is being able to evaluate that data and move forward. We respect the time. We begin and we end our meetings in a timely manner. We talk about things we can control. We remain engaged throughout our meetings, and we always maintain professionalism. Like I said earlier, when I say stay focused, we also stay positive. We listen respectfully. We consider issues from all perspectives. And that's one great thing that we have, having members of our team from across the state, that we're able to take varying degrees of everything into account when we talk about it. And that's another reason we want you guys to join us, so that we can have more things to consider when we're talking about issues and from other perspectives. One thing that we've also done that's helped is we hold our questions. So when we're talking about something, we wait until the end, and that way, if we have questions, we can address them instead of interrupting each other as we go. And that's helped us a lot too. So those were our 4 main norms that we've started with, that we would encourage you to use as well as you move on to setting norms and setting goals. Melinda, I'll let you talk about the goals.
Sure. So this are sort of our big 3 to create.
Can you guys still hear Melinda, or is it just me?
Yeah, I've lost her.
Okay, it's okay. I'll take over. Okay.
And establish learning goals.
Hey, Melinda.
Sorry,
Melinda, we lost you. If you could start back at I don't know if you froze and we lost your audio.
think you were telling us about 3 things, big 3.
She had an alert earlier that her video or her connection was low.
Okay, so I'll start over here for a minute. So our 3 main goals are to create a community for learning. So sharing resources and establishing common learning goals. So through those 3 big things, we're able to, oh, look, I think she's coming back. We're able to attend meetings. We engage in social media platforms to maintain contact with each other, and not just each other, but Spanish teachers all around the state, so that we have a community to rely on that can help us when we struggle, because none of us are perfect. We share resources, collaborating using various leveled resources, and we utilize the shared Google Drive that we have. And we've also created a shared Google Drive for Arkansas Spanish teachers that we're going to share with you at the end, so that, again, you just have a bigger network of sharing. Establishing common learning goals. The most importantly is that we be positive. Our student feedback that we give is positive and meaningful, and students can use it not to see what they did wrong, but to see what they did right and grow. We incorporate the 5 essential standards into lesson plans and allow them to guide our curriculum instruction. And we'll talk to you guys about what those essential standards that we've chosen are. And then we're hoping to work together at the state level this year to create one statewide CFA where we can share that measurable data and see where we are as an Arkansas PLC team. Melinda, are you back?
I'm
Okay,
back. Sorry about that.
It's okay. I'll let you go ahead with the essential standards.
Sure. Let's bring this up here. Okay, so we, of course, there are a lot of state standards. And so we collaborated together to bring it down to 5. And these are sort of the fence post to encourage a mindset for lifelong learning while setting goals, acting on one's progress, and using language for enjoyment, enrichment, and advancement. You see, we've got interpretive communication, interpersonal communication, presentational communication, and language and cultural comparison. So we really tried to hit all of the 5 C's in our essentials, to include interpretive and productive language and the cultural and linguistic comparisons to sort of hinge our lessons and unit plans.
Yes. So now that
Should I go
you know
deeper in that, we're going to come back to setting those essential standards later and unpacking them some more.
Yes, we will. So now that you know who we are and the work we've done and the work we're continuing to do, we want to take a minute to get to know you. So since there's so many of us in here, we're going to break up into some breakout rooms. And I want you guys to introduce yourself and share one thing that you hope to take away from this session.
Okay. Now, is Tracy going to set up the breakout for us?
I think Tracy's going to send us out, right, Tracy?
Just a second. I will put the y'all in the co-host in just a second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Susan, did they say how many minutes they want?
Okay, sorry, I was having a hard time unmuting myself. I hope everyone had fun taking a minute to get to know everyone. Was everyone able to get through getting to meet your friends?
Ooh, you're sideways, Carmen.
Oh, I don't want to be sideways.
There you are.
I was sideways and not meaning to, but now I'm going to try to fix it again.
You're fine. Nope, go back. There you go. Now you're muted.
Unmute. Okay, now I'm good. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so did everyone got to meet everyone? Melinda, Valerie?
Yeah, basically we got, could have probably used more time, but there was just a lot of excitement. I think people are really excited in my room to make connections outside of just their own department, or sometimes they are alone. So maybe we have some people joining us by the end of today.
Yes, I think so too. That was something that was expressed in our breakout room too, that we're really just so excited to have the opportunity to be able to collaborate and meet and speak with other teachers who teach the same subject as us, to where we just get to reach out to those other people. So I'm so glad to meet you all. I wish I could have met all of you. Maybe we'll get put in a breakout room together later today, but we are going to go ahead and move on to our second point of our agenda today. And our second point is essential actions. So when we say essential actions, we're talking about that laser-like clarity on what students need to know, as well as what proficiency looks like. Because so often we know what we want students to know, but it's more important for students to know what we want them to know. And that's where this PLC process has really come in really handy for Melinda and I, and sharing our vision for our students at Lakeside. Okay, moving right along.
So this quote is from Marzano. I think that when we talked about the, oh, am I muted? No. Okay. That Marzano did a study about all of the state standards and the national standards. And he concluded that if we taught all of the standards, we would be changing from a K-12 system to a K-22 system. So obviously we have to make choices when in our classrooms. And so, we had a discussion about the 5 that we would all agree. No, that's not to say we only teach those 5 standards. No, it was that these were there's need to knows and nice to knows, and that these 5 were that we found that we couldn't be without.
Yes. And I think we lost her again. So
talk about the targets.
So I know that those learning targets are something that had really come from Carmen and Melinda, and then I looked at those and we talked about it with my team at my school. And really, I think our dream is for those to be 5 essential standards that we see in every high school Spanish classroom in the state of Arkansas. So let's take a look at those.
Okay, so yes, so we will be looking at those essential standards in a little bit and a little more in depth, but we're going to start with the learning targets. And when we talk about the learning targets, these are something that of course could vary. And of course we want everyone to be distinguished when they finish Spanish, but we know realistically that in a lot of public high schools in Arkansas, they don't even start Spanish until they're in 9th grade. Some of you are lucky and get to start it a little younger. Some of you might not get to start it until a little later. So when we look at this, if we look at it as a proficiency goal of Spanish 1, Spanish 2, Spanish 3, Spanish 4, and AP, this is where we want the majority of their students to reach by the end of that year. Of course, we're going to have advanced students who at the end of Spanish 1 are past the novice mid goal, but our goal is novice mid at the end of Spanish 1, novice high at the end of Spanish 2, intermediate low at the end of Spanish 3, intermediate mid at the end of Spanish 4, and intermediate high at the end of AP. Now, some of you who aren't very familiar with actual proficiency guidelines might look at those words and say, I have no idea what any of that means. So what we did is we went through and told you what novice was. So if you look here, you can see novice. It says speaking, hard to understand. They produce speech that is a combination of phrases and sentences. They function mainly by using memorized language. Okay, reading. Readers at the novice level may rely heavily on their own background knowledge and extra linguistic support, such as imagery on the weather map or the format of a credit card bill to derive meaning. I know when I'm working with a lot of these novice speakers, I use my hands and motions a lot. So if I want to say walk, I say camina instead of just saying camina, camina, and saying it louder and hoping that they figure out what I'm saying because I'm raising my voice. So listening, they can usually understand keywords that are highly contextualized and highly predictable, such as those found in introductions, basic courtesies, or some very simple cognates. Okay. And then for the intermediate, we're just a step above. Okay. And what we mean by low, mid, and high is if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see it says low, mid, high. So the low implies that someone can sustain the level. So for example, the novice level, but barely, and they could never function at the intermediate level. Mid implies that they can sustain the level of novice fairly comfortably, but every now and then show a glimpse of intermediate. And a high, a novice high student, implies that a student is so comfortable at that novice level that they're almost ready for the intermediate level, and in fact exhibit characteristics of that intermediate level most of the time, but they can't sustain where they need to be at that intermediate level. So again, we're going to share this with you. I just wanted to kind of explain one level of it so that you could understand where we were coming from. And of course, if you have any questions about that, you can park them in that parking lot and we're happy to get to them. You can email any of us later and we're so happy to help. But I just wanted to go over that briefly. Melinda or Valerie, do you have anything to add to what I said about that?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right.
you.
So, okay, perfect. Moving into the next thing, I'm going to let Melinda take a minute to talk about those I can statements.
Yes, and so this is also part of, making the curriculum laser focused and transparent for students. And so ACTFL does recommend that in conjunction with the standards that you present student-friendly and statements to introduce the content. So for example, we have for each of the standards, we have corresponding I can statements. For example, I can understand, interpret, and analyze what is heard, read, or viewed on a variety of topics at novice mid-level. Okay, this would be the goal for Spanish 1. I can interact and negotiate meaning in spoken and written conversations. And you'll see that it does level up as you go through the levels. Just to contrast, I can understand, interpret, and analyze, but that you see that the proficiency levels do stagger. So a Spanish 1 is, can hear, read, or view a variety of topics at the novice mid. And then it's basically the text complexity or the text length is becoming more advanced. But the I statement is the same.
So to clarify what she said, the I can statements aren't changing for all of those levels because we have the same essential
Did you want to add
standards.
anything else to that, Carmen?
Yeah, I'm just going to try to clear up what you said a little bit because you're cutting out so bad.
Okay.
Okay. So it's okay. So
Thanks.
pretty much what she was saying is that through these essential standards, the really great thing about foreign language is that it doesn't matter if you teach Spanish 1 or you teach Spanish 4. We have the same essential standards. It's just the level of complexity that's changing. And so that's something that's really great and makes it easier for us as Spanish teachers than say if we taught math, for example, and we were having to teach different things throughout. And maybe math's a bad thing. I'm a terrible person to talk about math, but just pretend. Okay, moving back along to our slide. When we get to the next thing, you see it says common pacing guides. Now, one big important thing that I want to say about this is that this is only an example, okay? This is not what we're saying. This is what you have to use. This is what anybody has to use. This will go along with whatever curriculum that you use. As a department at Lakeside, this is our very skeleton of a unit calendar that we use. This unit calendar, we take a lot of heat for sometimes because it doesn't have dates on it. Ideally, they should have dates, but if you look at it, it makes perfect sense in my brain, even though it's a scary place to be. Anyways, you'll see that it says first 9 weeks, second 9 weeks, third 9 weeks, fourth 9 weeks across the top is how we have it broken down into more manageable chunks. And then down the side, it says week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5 through week 9. We have this is our very vague skeleton. This is not anything like we'll show you in a moment of how everything really needs to be done. But this kind of helped us get a center focus so that we knew what we needed to accomplish. The most important thing, or maybe not most important, but one really important thing that I would like for you to see here is that I'm going to scroll down to Spanish 4. If you'll scroll down to Spanish 4, Melinda, it's easier for me to talk about because that one, I've worked on that one recently. Okay, so if you look here, you'll see where I have my chapters in here. And then I have units, and then you see where it says flex right there. Okay, the neat thing about that is that we have built flex time into our calendar so that, say we were in the middle of teaching chapter 7, and when we assessed chapter 7, we realized that our students were struggling. So instead of messing up our whole calendar, we were able to pull one of those flex days in, so that we didn't have to readjust our calendar throughout the year. So that's another thing that we really want to show the importance of, and that's building that time in for some RTI, and we'll talk about RTI in a little bit. But so that's a common pacing guide, just an idea of a common pacing guide that we wanted to share with you. I saw Cecilia said something in the chat, but I don't know. On my phone, I can't see it all. Okay.
So Cecilia was saying that she uses Somos. Next year, they're going to use Huellas. We are going to share a directory for you guys to be able to add your name and what curriculum you use. And so that way we will be able to make those connections. And so if there's somebody who is, a lot of people do use Somos, so we can hopefully share ideas with one another there. Or if you use something else, you'll be able to use that.
Yeah, super great. So our next point is the benefits of defining essential standards, but I think that it will take us longer than 5 minutes to get through. So why don't we go ahead and take a 5-minute bathroom break right here, and then we'll start back. How's that sound? Good? Okay, so it's 1:10. I'll see you back at 1:15. Give it just a little more time and we'll get started back. Go ahead and get started back because it's 1:15. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is we've talked to you guys and we've said so many times, essential standards, essential standards. These are the 5 essential standards. So now I wanted to take a moment to talk to you about the benefits of defining those essential standards. And maybe Melinda hasn't come back yet, but there we go. Perfect. Okay. So the benefits of defining these essential standards, number one, are it guides the focus of the team meetings. You guys know that sometimes when you sit down in a team meeting, the first thing you want to do is talk about all of the things that you want to talk about. instead of necessarily the things that we need to talk about to make our meetings successful. And so this is one of those things that defining those essential standards does. It also helps guide our instruction, so we know exactly what we need to teach and we're crystal clear on that. It guides our common assessments. We know what we expect the students to learn, so we're able to create those assessments based on what they need. And then it guides intervention, and that's the intervention is when our students don't get what we wanted them to get. What can we do to be sure that they get it? And then it helps with vertical articulation and integration. So we do have an example here on the next slide of how to break down an essential standards chart. So Melinda's going to talk to you a little bit about the chart. Mm-hmm. And then we attached a more broken down sample of ours that Melinda will tell you a little bit about too. We did have to unlink all of our resources off of the sample we're sharing for copyright purposes, but we did want you to know when we do show you ours to make sure that ours is crystal clear. We link everything on this essential standards plan so that we're always right on the right path. So Melinda, if you'll, I don't know how to necessarily tell you, Valerie, since you're not on your phone, if Melinda starts cutting out again, if you'll just text her and tell her, I'll pick up where she cuts out, okay?
Okay, sorry about that, guys.
Okay.
So one of the sort of, I guess, what's different about language teachers as opposed to many of the other disciplines in the high school is that our essential standards are the same, right? We don't have content standards, for example, where, you know, you will be able to identify the scientific method and blah, blah, blah. Our standards are the same, and we're recycling them in you know, within a lesson, within a unit, and they just keep going. We might change the input, but the standard is the same. And so, you know, we did do this activity of, you know, going through a standard. And let me just give you an example of what our document looked like. So we wrote, for example, our essential standards. We had our interpretive, our interpersonal, our presentational, and our cultural. And we also, you know, kept in this document what our performance goal, novice, mid for the end of the year looked like. So that, you know, these were our I can statements next to it, along with our sort of general unit plan in terms of units. And so, for example, we create basically a little menu where we took our standards and broke them down per unit. This is kind of what she was talking about, where, for example, in our first unit, we introduced our essential questions, the AP themes, what our linguistic targets were. We linked our common formative and summative assessments and additional resources, because even when we both taught Spanish 1, we weren't having, we like use different resources or different activities. And so we would just sort of glob it onto this common document, and we sort of picked.
Okay.
We wanted to do to hit this chart, for example. Cutting out. Okay.
Sorry. So I'm going to take over again. So here on this chart, you'll see this was just a good place that we had where we could throw in exactly how long we wanted to spend on it, exactly the exactly what we needed to cover as far as structures or whatever grammar point we needed to cover. And this is what I was telling you a little bit ago. How we had that Spanish unit plan that was very vague, that just had the 9 weeks across the top, the 9 weeks down the side. And it just, so for example, it just said DSE, but if you look at this where you see it says Spanish 1, Unit 1, DSE, well, it did a moment ago. Scroll down just a bit, please, Melinda. Okay, right there. You will see like on the little plan, it just said DSE, but here you can see where we've broken it down. And we also, something that I really love about being able to do this is we can look at what AP themes tie into this curriculum so that our whole beginning at Spanish 1, our curriculum is full circle. And so that's something really exciting that we get to do when we're able to break down and work so intently in a PLC group like this. Okay, I'm going to move on to number 3. 3 is the teaching and assessment cycle. And this is the main thing that we focus on when we talk about PLC. And this is the 4 essential questions of a PLC. When we work with a PLC, the whole thing only revolves around answering these 4 questions. And that is, that's what makes us a PLC. So to start with it, we have the first question, and PLC critical question number 1 is, what do we want students to know? And to answer that question, that's where this work came into play. So the first thing that we did was we reviewed the state standards and aligned the curriculum. So if you click on curriculum documents, you don't necessarily have to click there, Melinda. I can just talk about it a little bit. If you click on the curriculum documents, when you get this PowerPoint, we have linked the Arkansas World Language Standards. And so we looked at that document that we know is all important. Everything on that document would be nice to know. Yes. And we chose the 5 essential standards that we felt were most all-encompassing to all of the other standards. And we made those our fence post standards that we cannot teach Spanish without being sure that the students have grasped this. And that's where we identified those essential standards for each level. So on the next thing,
This one?
Oh, my mouse is going crazy. Yes, will you click list of essential content standards, please? Okay, so when you see there, it says list of essential content standards. And I know that you know the standards, and this is not meant to insult your intelligence, but I do want to go through them because these are the 5 that of all the standards of all of the things that we felt were the most important. So as Melinda pointed out earlier, we did choose an interpretive, an interpersonal, and a presentational communication, and a language and a cultural comparisons. Please know that when we picked these standards, it was not easy. There were 5 of us, right, girls?
Yep.
Okay, and so we sat there and we had different ones that we thought were important for different reasons. And in the end, you have to pick essential standards that can be assessed through data. Okay, so there are standards that are so important. Okay, and we totally recognize, and they made it onto our list of how can we possibly teach without this standard. But what we were able to do is we were able to fold that one into another standard that we call a fence post that, but my brain just got distracted on a tangent. That folds into another one so that we're still covering all the standards, but we have the ones that are most important for us to cover. So, and then again, like we said, these are the essential standards for all levels. The only thing they change is the rigor in what we're presenting. So the complexity of documents, the length of documents, and so forth and so on, from levels 1 all the way through AP. The next thing we have is the vertically aligned standards. So if you look at the aligned curriculum guides that we have there, yes, we have our can-do statements. So again, when we say they're vertically aligned, the way that works for us is since we have the same essential standards for all levels of Spanish, we have the same can-do statements, but the only thing that's changing is I can do this all at a novice mid-level. I can do this all at a novice high level. And that's how we've been able to vertically align all of our can-do statements, which is, again, very, very helpful, regardless of the level you teach. And so I know, for example, when I'm getting my Spanish 3 students from Melinda, that her students knew that this was what was most important. So I'm going to take that same fence post and beat it in their heads for Spanish 3, just at the next level of speaking. And then the last action step of these action steps for what we want students to know was pacing the curriculum. And the pacing of the curriculum here is something that you're going to have to do yourself based on what curriculum you're using. But whatever curriculum you use, just know at the end of the day, our Spanish 1 goal is novice mid. So whatever you're doing it so that your students are at the novice mid level by the end of Spanish 1. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. I'm assuming your heads are nodding because I can not see anyone's head, but okay. So that brings us to our critical question number 2. How do we know if students have learned it? And this is through that data that I told you about in the last, when we picked our 5 fence posts. There were so many important ones, but that if we could not pull data from it, that it wouldn't count as something that we could use in this PLC process. So there are various ways that we can pull data. We have common formative assessments, common summative assessments, exit tickets, and lots of other things. Again, when we do this, how students have learned it, we're focusing on proficiency versus performance, okay? Because that's a totally different thing. We have a slide for it. We're going to talk to you about it in a little while. But before we do that, we do want to move back into some breakout rooms and talk to each other about what do you do to assess students that isn't necessarily a common formative assessment or a common summative assessment, or maybe it is. Maybe it's a type of exit ticket you give just to see where your students are at. So let's just take a couple of minutes. We'll take 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah, a little longer. Why don't we do 10 minutes this time? And let's just talk about what are some practices that you have in your classroom that help your students be most successful.
Okay, I'm going to move to 10 minutes and I'll set a timer to call you guys back.
Okay, thank you so much.
I think we're back.
All right, Valerie or Melinda, do you guys have any great takeaways from your room that you would like to share with the group?
Sure. So I really enjoyed hearing, Wilda was she didn't get to finish her thought, but she's telling us about what she does with exit tickets, and she's already doing RTI. So it sounds like you guys have got the, PLC, a really good understanding of what a PLC process, that cycle is. And then I also really enjoyed hearing from her colleague, Eric, I enjoyed hearing about what you're doing with your IB students and how it's just assets based. I think that's like a big thing for me right now, is just we're looking at what students can do. And that's even in the statement, I can do this. And just thinking about that the whole way through the whole proficiency scale, students can do something.
Yeah, and I wish we had more time. We didn't get to talk to everybody. But yes, from note cards to interactive notebooks, to, there's so many different ways. Quick writes are another helpful method for getting that formative data. But I think it was Kim who shared that it can be very, it's with large workloads and lots of time consuming grading. Give me a nod, Kim, if that's, it's, you know, a lot of time on feedback is part of it.
Yes, and of course, we talked about similar things, and a lot of big group assessing. So playing hot potato to retell a story or something like that, just spitfiring questions, to grasp understanding of a story that we just read. So those are all great ideas. So
Well,
that brings us.
One of
Go
the
ahead.
things that I had shared with my group, Carmen, was how for so long I've had a lot of informal formative assessments, whether it was whiteboards or little exit tickets. But when we started working together, I realized that didn't necessarily give me the data, right, that I could put into our data grids, and that you had shared, why don't we use all of our technology that oftentimes, whether it's a Kahoot or a Nearpod or a Pear Deck or some of these other, tech supports so that we could actually have some data to bring to our team meetings. That has made me rethink a little bit some of how to gather data formatively that I didn't necessarily, while I gathered formative data, I didn't have it so that I didn't have it in a format that I could bring to my team. And so
Right.
That's there as well.
Right. And as a plug for Kahoot, if you're not already using those amazing data reports that Kahoot will give you that tells you exactly what question, like which percentage of a question was missed or gotten correct, it's a really simple way to pull some immediate data and see where you still need to work. So I'm a big fan of those data reports on Kahoot. So that was a random plug for
I'm going
Kahoot.
the wrong way. Sorry.
You are, we are, it's okay. We are on slide number 18. There we go. So which brings us up almost back again.
This one?
We're on PLC critical question number 3.
There we go.
You don't have to have a premium membership to get those score reports on Kahoot. They're so cool. I'll reach out to me. Again, I'm Carmen Christner. My number's there on the directory that we'll share at the end. And I'm happy to tell you how I access them, and I can show you how I use them. It's super neat. Okay, but here we are at PLC question number 3, critical question number 3. What will we do if students don't know it? And honestly, personally, that's something that I've struggled with in the past, because I know how to plan to teach and I know how to teach it. But when I finish teaching it, in my brain, I need to move on. I've taught that. If you didn't learn it, you didn't apply yourself enough, you need to move on. So using this PLC process, I've been able to focus in on myself more to be a better reteacher to those students who aren't getting it. Mine and Melinda's thing, the thing we always focus on, the best intervention is prevention. So targeted small group instruction with those students who haven't quite gotten it, while advanced students focus on extension activities. Extension activities can vary. One of my favorite extension activities that I have in my classes, I have way back from when we were virtual for an extended period of time. I created a Bitmoji classroom. In that Bitmoji classroom, the whole thing is incredibly interactive, and they could click on things all day and never get to anywhere. And then, they would get somewhere, but they would never finish. They would never be able to finish clicking on everything, is what I'm trying to say. And so I have a Google form that goes along with my Bitmoji classroom, and it'll say, what did you click on? And say you clicked on the rug, and it takes you to rug weaving in Oaxaca or whatever. And then you click on the water bottle, and it'll take you to places that have all the water shortages in South America. And so it's just a really neat thing to where if a student finishes, they can continue learning about something that I would love to teach, but maybe don't have the time to teach in my curriculum because of all of the things we have to cover. So it lets those students who are advanced focus on an extension activity that I would like for them to know, but it's a nice to know, not necessarily a need to know. So that's one way we can do that. And of course, we have other ideas too. That's just one of my easiest and favorite because it can carry over from year to year. And even if a student had me last year, there's still plenty on my Bitmoji classroom that they can click on that they have never seen before. The other thing is leave time in your curriculum planning for giving student feedback, reteaching, and retakes. When I showed you that shortened unit calendar several slides back, that was the vague one. You saw where I had those flex times put into the calendar in various areas. That gave me time that if I needed to reteach something or do a retake of an assessment that where I totally flopped as a teacher and the students didn't necessarily achieve the level that I was hoping they would achieve, that meant that I had done something wrong and I needed to go back and reteach that and give them time to retake it after I retaught it. Another thing that's neat here is sometimes, like Melinda and I, for example, if she's really great at teaching something and I notice that it's a weakness of mine, or maybe I taught it and my students didn't quite get it, but when she taught it, her students did get it, that gives us an opportunity to team teach where she and I could flip flop. She could go back and reteach my students what I didn't teach them well. I could reteach her students, and it grows the camaraderie amongst our department too. So the students don't just say, well, I had Miss Christner, so I want to stay with Miss Christner, or I had Miss Smith, so I want to stay with Miss Smith, but they grow to have us all so that they can go, they just want to continue in Spanish regardless of who they have or what they have, what Spanish they have. And then the other thing is to extend and carry over your lesson using those flex units that I just talked about. So you can extend or carry over your lesson with those flex units. You can use those flex units for student feedback. You can use it for reteaching, whatever you need to do. But as you make your calendar, it's so important to leave that flex time in there so that you don't get yourself in a hole that you can't get out of. Melinda, do you have anything you want to add to the what do we do? They don't know it. You could maybe take a moment to talk about our win time.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think in just building on the best intervention is prevention is, having targeted hinge questions, whether it's in a specific lesson or some hinge assessment that, you can really take the pulse of the class. Because I think like a lot of us, we're giving input. We're thinking that they've all got it. And oftentimes it's surprising what they globbed onto and what they didn't. And so, being strategic and planning those in advance are really helpful, so that you don't give your summative and instead of 85 plus meeting proficiency or higher, it's more like 70. And then it's, it's very time consuming to then have to reevaluate your plan. So at least with our win time, we have 3 days a week that are devoted to reteaching and enrichment. And the way it works at Lakeside is that different departments have a different week where they're priority poll students. And so, oftentimes we'll just, pick a week and I'll pull the Spanish 1s or I'll pull the Spanish 2s and she'll pull some of the upper level kids. Sometimes, we can combine 1 and 2. If let's say that, we're working on some sort of, conjugation concepts. I think we all have those students that are a little bit slower in processing how verbs work in Spanish. And so oftentimes we'll have to do dedicated days for that. And we're growing with that. I think they started the win time process for us before we had our common formatives and summatives all ironed out yet. And so I think going forward, we're going to be able to be much more strategic in terms of how we use that time, and how we pull students. But it is an important aspect of that. And I think, preparing retakes and coming up with a retake policy for our slower processors is it helps to have a team to work with on that.
Yes, definitely. And like we said, if you don't have a team, that's what you have us for. So reach out to us. Let us help you become a part of our team so that we can all be more successful together. Okay, so that brings us to critical question number 4. So PLC critical question number 4 says, what do we do when they've learned it? So we had our question of what to do when they haven't learned it, which maybe is easier than what we do when they've learned it. So we have to plan ahead for students who master skills before others. So like I told you about the something like my Bitmoji classroom that we use, we want to hear some ideas that you do. So let's again take another 10 minutes and have another little breakout room where we turn and talk. Is that okay? 10 minutes?
Mhm.
Okay, so we'll take another 10 minutes in those breakout rooms to talk about some things that we do for those students who master those skills before others, whether it be a native speaker or an advanced student. What do you do that works in your classroom?
All right, you're going to breakout rooms.
Thank you. begin learning what our students have learned, what we wanted them to learn?
We had lots of good ideas in room 2. So I am going to create a Google Doc, if that's okay.
That's
so that we can all share some ideas, and we can put that in our shared Arkansas teacher file, if that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds great. Valerie, maybe also if you could make another column for what we could do when students haven't learned it. And that way we can post both of those things in there. And maybe even a good idea too of the other thing we talked about, where we talked about assessments and some other types of assessments like you do, like maybe you do those Kahoots or something like that. What works in your classroom that has the potential to work in our classrooms as well. But anything sobresaliente that you want to share from your room? Sorry, I don't know a good word for that in English.
I heard a lot of people liked GimKit, which I have not used, so I'm excited to check that out. Yeah, and just anything related to culture, that's what kids remember once they're long out of high school anyway. So,
right. Okay, Melinda. Did we lose Melinda? I see her little mousey moving. Maybe she's muted. Are you muted?
Yes, I
Okay.
was muted. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So yeah, there were a bunch of different ideas. We talked about how, for native speakers, oftentimes, providing additional resources. Santanilla text was one thing they did in Malvern. Yvka did, ordered for some of her native speakers. We talked about, using stations to differentiate, to have stations for those kids who have mastered the content. I shared how we would have, if we were ready for an enrichment week, that popular enrichment options that we offered in our win time were Selena, the series, and Netflix, and Gran Hotel, that those kids that weren't even in our classes would sign up for. And so I guess that it goes under that culture umbrella is that Valerie was talking about.
Right. I would say two of the exciting things that we talked about in our group was a country project that they do at Lake Hamilton, where the students just work on one country all year long. And they know that when they finish, they go ahead and start working on the next part of the project. And so by the end of the year, they have this big project finished about a country that they've decided to learn about, or even something as simple as a magazine rack or a bookshelf in your classroom that students can just pull and read when they have some free time. So yeah, those are all good. And yes, we will post those pages that Valerie was just talking about in our shared Google Drive that we'll show you a little bit about at the end. But that does bring us to the next, to our next number on our slide. But before starting that, again, since we're already close to our bathroom break, we're going to go ahead and take it. We're going to take another 5 minutes. So it is 2:06. So I'll see you back at 2:11 and we'll keep going. Start back then since it's 2:11. All right. So back to our PowerPoint brings us to our bubble number 4, grading for proficiency. I can't see all of your faces, but the ones that I can see, where do you feel like you are on a level of grading for proficiency? Is that something that you've adapted for your classroom yet? Or are you still kind of on a right or wrong scale? So proficiency, yes or no? Thumbs up for yes. Okay, no. Okay. So yeah, a little bit of a wide range, which is fine. We're actually going to do it a little bit together today, which is exciting. So proficiency versus performance. Has Melinda, have you made it back yet?
Yep, I'm here. Sorry. Am I?
No problem.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say.
What did you say?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I was just going to say that there's been a lot of talk in the field about, what we're doing in our classrooms and the adaptation of ACFIL performance descriptors, and whether, we're really grading proficiency or whether we're grading performance. And I think most people agree that since our classrooms are kind of artificial constructs, that, we're using the proficiency guidelines as guidelines, because it's not necessarily, assessment is just a snippet in time, right? And it's not, unless we're doing an OPI type of proficiency evaluation, what the kinds of assessments that we're doing in our classroom are really assessing their performance of the learning targets. And so oftentimes, just keeping that in mind, that, that we're assessing performance as opposed to really labeling students' proficiency, because they are just, specific content standards and a moment in time.
Yes. Okay. Okay, which brings us to our different assessments have different purposes slide. And again, I'm going to let Melinda talk about this slide a little bit.
Well, I was this last year, I was part of another PLC in our school, which was the assessment committee. And we really kind of did a deeper dive into how we do assessments. And I remember back in the day when, people talked about formative assessments and summative assessments. And basically what that meant to say were quizzes are formative and tests are summative. And that was sort of the language that I had brought to it. And so we've really started to redefine what a formative assessment is. And, what is a summative assessment? And so one of the sort of mindset shifts that I personally had to undergo is that, what is the purpose of the assessment? Is the assessment to give the students feedback to where they are in the learning objectives? Or are we collecting evidence that they have acquired the targets? And so instead of thinking, okay, well, this vocab quiz is formative because it comes before the summative, we've started to be thinking about how the different kinds of activities that we do in class, are we giving them the feedback that they need to do well on the summative assessments? And so when we think of what a formative assessment is, that's sort of the context, and that they're to be used to guide learning rather than judge learning. So in that old way of thinking, or the former way of thinking, I should say, the quiz, oftentimes we were using it to judge the learning. It was really a summative assessment of the vocabulary. We just called it formative because it came before a test. And so rethinking that a little bit is kind of where we're moving. And so usually when we think of like the summative assessment, sorry, I'm not sure who's at my door, that someone will get it. There goes the dog. Okay, that, we think of the summative assessment is kind of the meal that they're going to prepare, right? They're going to be baking a cake, and the summative is the cake. When we're thinking about the formatives, we're looking at the different components in the recipe. Can they, have they mastered all the skills necessary to bake the cake? And so the formative, when we're thinking about what we're going to use as an formative assessment, whether we give a grade on it or not, or put it in the grade book or not, is on those individual targets. So the summative being the evidence that they have acquired those targets. And they give us that, ideally they are celebrations of learning rather than measurements of who has it and who doesn't. Hopefully by the time we get to a summative, we are going to have a good handle on who can bake the cake. And so, and also making sure, one of the things that we've focused on this year is making sure that the standards and the ICANN statements are built into the summative assessments, so that not only are we really clear when we're designing the assessment, but the students as well, that these are the standards we're targeting on this assessment. That's all I can think of right now. If Carmen, you want to chime in?
Yes, no, that's great. Sure. So again, that when we talk about these formative assessments, that we're not using these formative assessments to say whether or not they've learned what we wanted them to learn, but to use them to guide, like to guide not just their learning, but our teaching rather than judging whether or not they've learned it. So really we say that those are formative assessments for the students, but really they're also formative assessments for us as teachers so that we can change what we're teaching or how we're teaching it to be sure that our students are where they need to be. Because if we're not where we need to be, they've got to be, they're not going to be where they want to be. And then that with those summative assessments, one thing that I've really struggled with the whole summative assessment thing this year is that if a student didn't get it when they had that summative assessment, that they're given another chance to try to get it. That maybe they need some one-on-one tutoring and let them retake it, because our goal as a teacher is for them to learn it. So therefore, if they failed a test, instead of saying, well, you should have studied for it the first time, which is what we want to say, and 17 years ago, we didn't do retakes, you know what I mean? And so, but we're at that point to where in the PLC process, that if our ultimate goal is that we have our students where we want them to be for life, then they should be able to retake these things until we've given them what they need to be successful, right? So that's been something that's really hard for me to digest, because I've always been very anti-retakes. You should have studied the first time. So this is somewhere that I am growing as a teacher, but it's been neat to look at a different version of the formative versus the summative assessment. So again, with that, what we want to focus on is remembering that we aren't grading what the students can't do, but we're grading what the students can do. And this is a big shift that Melinda and I have made in our grading this year, so much so that when we check our papers, we don't mark what's incorrect, we only mark what's correct. Because in the end, when we evaluate a student's work, we aren't trying to see what they don't know. We're trying to see what they do know. And so I think that's a big mindset shift that we're trying to overcome in the educational world, because all you think of is that red pen, marking out what it wasn't right. And so we've adjusted to marking only what is correct. So for example, if we write a story, we're going through with that green highlighter, marking what we love in the story. We love that you said que se llama. We love that you said tiene hambre instead of es hambre. We love that you used está instead of es when you were talking about how she was feeling. And if they used es instead of está, we're not marking that. Because they got it wrong, because I still knew that he meant she was sad, even though he put es sad. It wasn't written quite the way I would have liked for it to write. But as someone who teaches language learners and at the novice level, I don't expect them to be distinguished, right? And always use ser estar properly, or always use por y para when they need to. And so that's something we really have to focus on. So another thing we've adapted into our curriculum this year that I know some people have, some people haven't, but our grading is grading on an AP scale. So we've started grading on a 5-point scale, which is something that we've been doing our PLC group this year to make sure we're grading the same across the state. So for example, Valerie in Siloam Springs and me in Hot Springs could give the same could give a writing assessment, and Valerie would score it the exact same way I would score it based on those proficiency standards. So we're going to take a minute to look at the proficiency standards. Melinda, can you pop those up on the screen?
Sure can. They're back here.
They should be at the bottom. If you look at, I believe, slide 16, where it says pacing guide course sequence.
Sorry.
I want to say it's at the bottom of that. You're wrong.
You said 16? Yes. Is that it?
Oh, no, that's, I did say slide 16. Let me, I think where it says,
I've got them at the bottom of the
um,
can-do statements.
right. Okay. You got them?
I do. Now I just got to find my share. There we go. Let me find them for you. Okay.
Okay. So, and if you could open up a Spanish 1 writing sample, writing and speaking there. Okay. I want us to take a minute to look at some of these. I think Melinda's frozen, so she's not quite scrolled down. But it's okay. I can read them to you. She doesn't usually stay frozen that long. Okay, so if we're looking at the can-do statements, or the underneath, if we're looking at the proficiency-based grading for these items, I'm gonna have to open it up because I can't see. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, here it is. I had to open it up on my other computer screen. I've got like 3 screens here going. We see as at the beginning level, it says, I am unable to write in the target language. I need some help to build my confidence in order to begin writing in the target language. That would be a 1. 2, my writing is almost entirely incomprehensible. I need some help to understand how to write in Spanish. A 3 would be, I use a small number of repetitive words and phrases. I use some simple words to provide basic information, and my writing is understood only with great effort. A 4, which would be proficient at the Spanish 1 level, is I use a limited number of words and phrases, but they are repetitive, and I use words, phrases, and occasional sentences to provide basic information. My writing is frequently incomprehensible. Or I use 5, advanced 5 is I use familiar words and phrases and elaborate a little. I use phrases and short, simple sentences to provide basic information, and my writing is mostly comprehensible. Okay, so I'm going to read a couple of sentences to you, and I want us as a group to try to see how you would score them. Huh?
To maybe do a 5-finger.
Right, and if you don't feel comfortable showing your 5-finger where you think they belong on a board, don't feel obligated. So we're going to read through a couple of different short ones, okay, to practice. So, esta es Daniel. Daniel camina a casa. Tiene un verde camisa. Daniel está atlético. Okay, so what would you give that? Do we want me to remind you of the phrases that you're listening for? Mm-hmm. Your key phrases you're looking for is, I use a limited number of words and phrases, but they're repetitive. I use words, phrases, and occasional sentences to provide basic information. My writing is frequently incomprehensible. That's the 4. Okay. Or 3, I use a small number of repetitive words and phrases. I use some simple words to provide basic information, and my writing is understood only with great effort. So where you're kind of looking at is a 3 is my writing is understood only with great effort. 2, my writing is frequently incomprehensible. Or 3, my writing is mostly comprehensible. Let's listen one more time. Esta es Daniel. Daniel camina a casa. Tiene un verde camisa. Daniel está atlético. Where would you place the student?
Or you can put it in the chat if you'd rather give it a number.
I can't see many fingers. I see a lot of like this, where like I can see one of your fingers, but not not all
It'd be
of
easier
them.
if you put them in the chat.
Lots of 3. Yeah. Want to throw them in the
Okay,
chat?
there's a 3, a 3, a 3. Okay, so good. It looks like a lot of us think that it's a 3. If you don't think it's a 3, what do you think the characteristics are that make this a 3 instead of a 4? Because I saw some 4s.
Mhm.
Barbara, I see you speaking. Do you want to unmute and tell us what you said?
I'm on the fence. I first said 3, but when you went over it again, I don't think there's enough to say it's incomprehensible. And I like to always side, I would rather see the glass a little more full. I think I'm going to move with a 4.
Okay.
Okay. To me, I agree with you somewhat. This is a very strong 3 or weak 4. In my opinion. It's not a very solid number. It's not a solid 3 to me. It's not a solid 4 to me when compared. So usually when I grade these, like a 5 would be a 95 to 100, where a 4 would be an 85 to a 95. It would be more like a 88. It wouldn't be a 90, but maybe not a hard 85. Let's look at another one. Okay. And again, I'm just pulling some of these randomly to share with you. So if I pull 2 3s or 2 4s, I apologize. We had all of these really great ones that we were going to share with you at school. And our internet at our school has been down for days. And so we can't access our things. Okay. So this student chose to do their story in a storyboard format. Okay. So there are speech bubbles. It says, Hola, ¿cómo te llamas? Me llamo Jacobo. ¿Y tú? Me llama Luna. Hola, Luna, ¿cómo estás? Estoy bien. ¿Y tú? Estoy contento. Jacobo. I had to. S-I-C. Uh-oh. Am I muted?
Yeah, we lost you for
Am I
a
good?
second.
Okay, sorry. So it says, Jacobo, ¿qué tiempo hace hoy? And hoy hace viento. Gracias, Luna. Gracias. Adios, Jacobo. Okay, that's the story that they wrote. What do you think that is? Throw your numbers in the chat. Let's see what you think. Okay, now what would this story be to you if I told you that this story was written on September 1st by a Spanish 1 student? Because this was a story, right, written on September 1st by a Spanish 1 student. So who had only been in Spanish for 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks of August, right? So to me, when I look at that story, that's a definite 5. We had very few errors. If you look at it, the only error that I read to you guys was mistake, and the majority of you gave it a 4, right? What caused you to give it a 4 instead of a 5? Just the basicness of the memorized phrases? Is that what it was? Because remember that a 5 is my writing is mostly comprehensible. Was that writing mostly comprehensible to you?
Yes.
It was, right? So that's where we're kind of having to adjust. So if I had highlighted good parts of that, everything would have been highlighted except for one small thing, right? And would one small mistake justify a 4? even if it was basic vocabulary?
No, I don't think so.
Not at a novice low level, right?
Not in September for sure.
Not in September. Okay, let's look at one more. Okay. I have no idea what I'm about to open. It's just, I should have planned that better. I apologize. Okay. Okay. Ready? Here we go. Do you need me to remind you the markers again?
No, we're good.
All right. My writing is understood only with great effort is a 3. My writing is frequently incomprehensible is a 4. And my writing is mostly comprehensible is a 5. Okay. So here we go. Esta es Lily. Lily camina a la escuela en la mañana. Este es Mark. Mark es atlético. Mark corre a escuela en el mañana. Lily abre la escuela puerta. Mark cierra el puerta, pero Mark transforma a un mono. Lily le da policía un llama. El policía arresta Mark el mono. Okay, so quite an interesting story, yes. But judging by your smiles, you got the story, right? You understood it. Were there errors? Absolutely. But let's look at the amount of structures here. We have
Right.
esta es, camina a, es, corre, abre, cierra, transforma, le da, and arresta. We have 9 structures in those few sentences. And for the most part, the structures are correct. Is that 100? No, not 100, right? Definitely not 100. We had some stuff like el puerta, right? Does saying el puerta mess up? Do you now know that it no longer means door because she said el? No, we're still good, right? It didn't impede our comprehension of her story. All right. So I saw some different numbers come in. I saw some 5s. I saw some 4s. Let's talk about why you would give this one a certain number over another. Does anyone have some?
I give it a number 4 because we focus in language acquisition and all the curriculum, first of all. And second one, because I use a limited number of words and phrases, but they are repetitive. I can give it 5 because even they had some mistake. This doesn't count for grammar, but the language acquisition need more practice. That's why I give it 4 and not 5.
Okay. I will say, looking at that one, that I did give it a 5. Again, that story was written on September 1st in Spanish
Okay.
1. September. All those stories I read were from the same assignment that were written September 1st in a Spanish 1 class. So,
okay, can you elaborate? Can you hear me? Can you elaborate on that? A Spanish 1 student doing that? Was there an exploratory Spanish before that class? I don't understand how a Spanish 1 student can have that capability. Is it a Spanish speaking Spanish 1?
No, it's not. That was actually just a normal Spanish 1 student. We use Somos, which is a CI-based curriculum that teaches stories through storytelling.
Yes.
Teaches Spanish through storytelling. And so those are all structures that they had learned in stories that we had read so far in the first 2 weeks of school. We don't start with the typical, these are the rules. We start day 1 with Spanish, and by the 3rd week, that's where that student was. So we had gone over all of those structures enough, camina, corre, abre, cierra, and le da, that she was able to use them in a story. So she was an advanced student. I mean, she didn't have, it was her first Spanish class.
That's amazing.
And also,
Yeah.
This is focusing in core
In corre and camina.
This is the difference of when you're reading the different stories, the student can be able to repeat.
Right. Those were definitely repeated phrases, which we would expect in the third week of Spanish 1, right? No way would she be able to use phrases that she hadn't heard and memorized yet.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving right along because we're running out of time, and there is there's definitely another part that I want to get to. But hopefully that was beneficial to you to see how we're grading on what they can do and not what they can do. Is our conclusion and next steps. So for our conclusion, I want to say 38, 48. I guess we're only going to have, we won't breakout room. We'll stay here. Let's talk about as a group, where are you in your department in terms of aligning your curriculum to state standards? In the chat, a 5 would be you're there. Your curriculum is aligned to state standards and you're good to go. 1, you can be like, well, I know what the standards are and I know what my curriculum is, but I haven't really sat down and aligned it. 3, I'm kind of in the middle. I would just like to see where you are. Some 3s, some 4s. That's kind of about where I expected us to be. Good. I'm actually seeing some bigger numbers too, which I think is super great. Okay, so does your department use common assessments? Yes or no? Okay, I think I've only seen no's.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, I said, does your department have common assessments? Okay, there's some sums. Okay, do you see the benefit in using these common assessments across the grade level to be able to compare data? Okay, do you think, good, I like that you're planning to be able to use more. Hopefully you've gained something from this PD that you'll be able to take back and use in your school. That being said, what from today do you think you'll be able to take back to your team, if anything? Does anyone want to share out loud? You don't have to write, but what you could help make your department more PLC centered or focused?
I'll start. I'm Kim. I think one thing is that with my PLC, since I am the only Spanish teacher, I do collaborate with the French teacher, that we've talked about we'd rather be with the English teachers. And somebody had mentioned that that'll really help me to go back into my principal, and give him some data for why that we would be better off with the English department. So I like that. And I also love the fact that the can-do statements, focusing on what they can do.
Thank you for sharing that, Kim. Are there others who would like to contribute something that you've heard today?
Yeah, I'd like to add something. I think it's the grading for what kids can do is definitely something I think deserves some closer looking at, for 2 reasons. For me, I'm also an MYP teacher, and both IB and MYP are based on these assessments about what kids can do. And I mean, it's very literal. And I tell the kids, like, this isn't right or wrong stuff. This is like measuring the skills that you have. Now, if you're doing X, Y, and Z and 1, 2, and 3, that's going to show you. But if you only have X, Y, and Z, that's what it's going to show you. Now, kids like to think of good versus bad, right versus wrong. And that's a framing of the presentation of the material a bit differently, because it's not like, we're not like other subject areas where it's very, very binary, if you will. And
Right.
so I feel like I have to present the kids, like the more you bring to the table, the more that you want to improve your language acquisition. That's what it is. It's not how well it's not about errors versus right versus wrong. It's how well are you picking up the language to communicate in an effective manner. And that
Absolutely.
just shows depth of vocabulary, complexity in the language that you're using to demonstrate whether you're describing or writing or reacting or whatever it is. So I think at least me and my department with the French teacher as well, plus also the teachers at the junior academy, you know, the middle school, like this is a long conversation to think about how we measure that, about what we're going to write into our documents to say, writing so that we're measuring what we're seeing as opposed to the right versus wrong nature of what we're tempted to do, because that's how we've always done it.
Right. It's definitely a mind shift that we have to tackle in order to be able to look at what we can do instead of what we can't.
Armin, I think the other thing that's a big takeaway from today is we have probably several on here when I looked at the registration where they're from that are singletons. They are the only Spanish teacher. So now there's a resource that just because you may sit on another PLC team in your building doesn't mean that you can't collaborate with other Spanish teachers from another school to plan your lessons and to move forward. And I think that's the positive. You can start having some conversations about where your kids are going with someone from another district.
Yeah, and I want to add,
Exactly.
if that's okay, what Tracy, piggybacking on what Tracy just said, even you're talking about common formative assessments and as a singleton, bringing your data to the state team. And then my kids did this well, but Valerie, your kids did so much better. Like, what strategies did you use to teach? And would you mind like zooming into my class, teaching my class one day, or letting me zoom in and observe you? And so this really is a fantastic opportunity for you guys to collaborate and not be singletons and build this statewide guaranteed Bible curriculum.
Right.
Exactly. And I'm so glad and excited to see that you guys are seeing the importance of these proficiency-based standards and how important it is to grade what our students know instead of what they don't know. Because in the end, that is our ultimate goal, that we know what students know, not what they don't know. Because clearly they come to us and it's like a foreign language because it's a language that most of them have never learned before. And so we already know that they don't know anything when they get to us. So focusing on what they can do and what they have learned definitely needs to be at the forefront of our minds, while being sure that they know what we expect them to learn up front. Melinda and I have
that was one of the things that I was going to share, that one of the things that's really important to do at the very beginning is sharing with students what the proficiency guidelines are, what the language levels are, so that you have a common language. And I even put the proficiency targets in my daily slideshow. I put the standards in my daily slideshow. This is an interpretive task, and these are so that when I say, okay guys, let's level up, what are the kinds of things that they need to add to their performance to get that higher level, has been really helpful. And there's a lot of different strategies you can use to teach them the proficiency levels, but getting them fluent in the language of the standard and in the levels is, I think, really important part of it. And being very transparent from the very beginning, this is where we are, this is where we're going to get to. Is very, very important.
Very much.
And one more quick freebie that I hadn't planned on saying, but I'm throwing it out there for the fun of it before I move on. Another thing Melinda and I have done this year that has really taken our instruction to the next level is on all of our assessments, formative, summative assessments, whatever it is, we're listing those can-do statements on our assessments. So when they look at it, they say, okay, here's what I need to do for this test or for this assessment. I can narrate in the third person. Okay. And they know exactly what they're trying to do for that assessment. And then at the end of our assessments, we're building in a reflection piece. How do you feel like you did on this assessment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why do you feel like you made this? What do you think you need to do better? you know, and so that when they leave, they don't have to say, well, I wonder how I did on this. They know how they did on it because they knew exactly what we were looking for. So our students aren't continuously asking us, what did I make on this? What did I make on that? Exactly. They're taking ownership of their own learning.
Right.
They
We put the
know what
rubric
they knew.
on the assessments. Yeah, the rubric
Right,
itself
everything is
on the
there.
assessment.
So I literally have my students circle what they made on the test. And then they can look at it compared to what they actually made. And I can say, now you put here that you think you should have gotten a 4, but I scored you a 3. Where do you think the discrepancy is? But I would say 9 times out of 10, they know where they're at. Okay. And it takes you out of the whole picture because they can grade themselves because they know what's expected of them.
Absolutely.
Okay. But sorry, that was
No, that's good.
I got off my rabbit trail. Sorry. Okay, so back to our thing. Looking at the next slide of our PowerPoint, we're on slide 25.
Mhm.
Let's see, we're almost there, which is join our team. So join the ADE 912 Spanish PLC team. We meet monthly via Zoom, establish common goals for the state, those of which we've shared with you today. Of course, we edit, we adapt, we add to make things work for our students and for our teachers. It gives you a PLC network of a group that you can connect with, plan, share ideas, and we would love to have you be a part of our team. If you are interested in joining our team, there's a link here where it says join the collaborative team here. It is a Google form that we have made that we would love if you're interested for you to go in there and fill that out, give us a little bit of information. We'll reach out to you. So that's that. And then on to the next slide, keep in touch. We've made some resources for you guys that we would love for you to take part of if you're interested. I'm going to go through each of them individually so that if you have any questions or any problem joining, that I can help you. The first is join the Arkansas Spanish Teachers Group Me. And Valerie's going to go ahead and send the link out in the chat to this presentation so that you can click on all of these links yourself. The first one, and this is the next to last slide. The last slide is the thanks to all of the wonderful companies that allowed us to use their fonts and their slideshow format and all of their things. We tried really hard to be sure and credit all of the companies and books that we used so that you can use them if you're interested. So let's see, I lost myself. Okay. All right. So first, join the Arkansas Spanish Teachers Group Me. I created a group me that if you would like to join it, there's the link there where you can, hey guys, I'm really struggling this week. I'm out sick. This is what I'm teaching. Does anyone have a quick lesson about Biblioburro that you could share? Maybe someone has something that they can share really quick. Don't recreate the wheel. Please close the door. I'm almost finished. Thank you. Close the door. Thank you. I'm sorry. We made it almost the whole 3 hours. I'm really sorry. Okay. So join the Arkansas Spanish Teachers Group Me there. It'll just be a good place for us to communicate. Second, we have the Arkansas Spanish Teacher Directory. If you click on that, you'll see Valerie, Melinda, and I have already taken a moment to fill in our information there. There's a place for you to write your name, your school, what levels you teach, what curriculum you use, and your email address. That way, if I teach Somos and Valerie uses Senderos, and I really need to know if somebody has something for Unit 5 of Senderos, but I know that Barbara uses Somos, that I can take a moment to reach out to Valerie instead of Barbara without having to bother everyone if I choose not to use the group me and want to reach out to someone individually. Or maybe Darcy and I really just hit it off today and had a good connection, and I want to be able to reach out to her for her to share that amazing project with me that she was telling us about in one of our breakout sessions. The next thing I'll talk to you a little bit about is the Arkansas Spanish Teachers shared Google Drive that we made. In that shared Google Drive, we've placed the PowerPoint for today in there, and we've also linked all of the documents. Oh, I didn't make it where you can access it, huh? Let me see, 1 second. I can make this public. I'm so sorry. Okay, so in the shared Google Drive, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that the directory was not public. That was my mistake. Share. And if I did this to other things, please feel free to just be like, hey, you didn't share this, and request access and I'll fix it. I do apologize. So is the shared Google Drive. We've placed all the documents from today in the shared Google Drive. We've also created folders for levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 5 NAP. Let's see. I need to make this where anyone with the link. Okay. Okay. I've updated permissions for the directory. Okay. So, and in that shared Google Drive, say, Paola, I know you, for example, were telling everyone about a super great project. If it's multi-leveled, you're welcome to just post it in there and we can figure something out. You can drop it in a specific folder if you think it's specific to one thing, but maybe just a place where we can collaborate with resources. Please be very careful that if you purchase something though, say off of Teachers Pay Teachers, that you're not sharing something that someone else owns the rights to, right? Because we definitely want to give all of that credit. Next, summer book study. If you're interested in a summer book study, the book Common Ground, Second Language Acquisition Theory Goes to the Classroom is an amazing book that we cited some in our PowerPoint today. That really just helps you wrap your head around teaching Spanish at for acquisition, not just let me teach you all of the verb tenses, but let's talk about how to conversate and communicate in Spanish. We can talk about it in the group me. We can make a separate Google Classroom. There are all kinds of ways that we could do that. If you're interested, we could just talk about it. Or I know Valerie, you told me about a super great group on Facebook where they're studying the book.
Mhm. Yep.
See, Valerie has it.
I have the book. I love the book. If you are interested, I saw from the ARC TSAW group, I joined a national or maybe even international book study. So if you are interested in that, just feel free to email me. I'm in the directory and I can send you the info for how to sign up for that. Great book.
Okay, and then of course we have our parking lot that you can keep posting into. Are people still having problem getting into the directory, or is it good now? Is that good or not good? Not good. Okay, let me go back and look again. I'm still getting requests, but I thought that it looks like lots of people are on it. Maybe I put view and not edit. Yep.
That's it.
Okay, I can fix this. I'm so sorry. I thought I fixed it last time. Change. Copy link. Anyone on the internet can edit. Okay, there we go. Now you can do it. I apologize again. Okay, so there you go. That's a place where we can reach out. And then the last thing that was also on the previous slide, join our team, 8712 Spanish Collaborative team here. Click the link, fill out the form. We would love to have you. We would love to collaborate with you, make our state better for studying foreign languages. And just know that our team, Valerie, Melinda, as well as the other members of our team who weren't able to be here today, are here for you. We want to help you be as successful as you can be. So please feel free to reach out to us, and however we can help, we're happy to help. Thank you so much for coming to our PD today. We loved seeing all your wonderful faces and hearing your enthusiasm for teaching and proficiency-based learning and PLCs. Have a glorious day. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us.
I can write in my name in the directory list. So I don't know why, but I can write in my name there. I'm very interested.